Hi, I'm Zhiyu, representing Entertainment Intelligence Lab at Georgia Institute of Technology, presenting Plug and Blend, a framework for controllable story generation with sketches. A too-long-don't read version of what we are going to present is that Plug and Blend introduces blending control to your continuation model and grants high-level planning capabilities to it. It's great for generating stories designed with co-creativity in mind and will benefit other procedural content generation applications. This presentation is outlined on why, how, and how well does Plug and Blend work and how can we benefit from it. Language models keep advancing. They becoming bigger, better, and most importantly, different. And with it going into the cloud, we may not have access to their internals. However, we still want to keep controlling them. Can we decouple the controlling process? Secondly, prompts are not the richest signal authors can give to a generation model. Can we continuously blend the topic control into the generated content? Finally, intentions from authors cover part of the story. They can overlap each other. They represent story arcs and transitions. Ultimately, can we plan and provide both high-level and fine-grained blending control to generated stories? And this is what Plug and Blend is. It works with the logic output of any continuation language model, facilitates continuous steering towards specific control codes, and allows multiple control codes to be provided in overlapping contexts when generating a story. Let's look at how it works. First, a brief on language model. They are designed to predict whether a bunch of tokens resembles a natural language sentence. And we can rebuild the model so that they instead condition both on whether it forms a natural language sentence and fits a specific constraint. However, doing that means that we have to retrain the model, and there are two ways to prevent that. Either we use the internal knowledge, change the hidden representations, add additional modules, or in Plug and Blend way, we look into black box approaches where we don't need any internal knowledge and we operate on the output of the model. Plug and Blend consists of two important modules. First, blending generative model, and second, the planner. Let's dig into the first. The blending generation model is responsible for continuing a sentence with one or more specific control code with different weight. And briefly speaking, what we are expecting is that by reducing the requested strength on a topic and increasing on another, we should see sentence generated bias more and more towards another specific topic instead of the original topic it is on. And an independent bar-based classifier is used here to label how likely the generated sentence confines to a specific topic as confidence score. And as you can see in this example, overall speaking, when what we requested as topic confines to what we get from the classifier score. How do we do that? We can instead train an additional classifier that is independent of the base language model and contrast it against an anti-attribute. That means that whether on the sentence not confining to a specific topic, and use a comparison ratio on each token to modify the original logic from the base language model so that the result pushes the generated sentence towards direction of a higher chance classifying into a specific control code. And we can do that multiple times with different weights. And by extending this framework to multiple control code cases, this allows us to introduce multiple attributes to a generated sentence, introduce weights for each attribute, while still keeping it all decoupled from the base language model. Now let's look at the planner, which is responsible for generating multiple sentences. We formalize high-level controls as area of effect, described as control sketches each containing a topic and an area of effect. We interpret that as a story arc on a specific topic, which typically contains a transition, an engagement, and a phase-out. As you can see here in these example-generated stories, they are generated using a request having two different topics. And as you can see, this generated paragraph contains sports and science and technologies as what they are mentioning. And for the first sketch, we requested science and technology topic to be appearing earlier in this story so that we see an earlier transition into science and technology topic from the sports topic here. Under the hood, for each sentence position and for each sketch, a control strength is determined by using a normal distribution. This can happen multiple times as sketches can be on the same topic and can overlap. We normalize that after each application. An example is shown on the right-hand side where we have three different configurations with minor changes on a starting area on a complement control code. The first configuration requested the earliest application of the second control code, so the strength of the first control code faced the fastest so that the planner can prepare for the second topic to appear. Let's talk about how we evaluate this framework. We look into blending fluency, which is how these sentences form natural language, the fidelity of control on how well the generator responds to multiple control codes applied at once, and finally, an evaluation study on performance on different base language models. We then evaluate our planner and the whole system by inviting humans to read the story and evaluate. We fine-tuned a GPT-2 model on rock stories, which contains 5-sentence length stories. We take 100 prompts from the evaluation split and generate the next sentence with varying topics and blending weights to evaluate the blending generation model, and we further take 5 prompts and using them as starting points to generate stories and inviting the participants to determine whether they sense a transition. Let's go into details. As you can see here, when we have a mild control strength, we see that by measuring the loss from the original base language model, this sentence still pretty looks like a natural language sentence determined by the original base language model. And we clearly see a trade-off between control strength and the sentence likelihood of being a natural language sentence. For control fidelity, we look into whether giving more strength to a control code will result in a sentence that is more related to the control. We create 5 sentences that goes on gradually changing control codes and look into whether they adhere to the classifier score that is on the generated sentence. A total order fit will give a 100% matrix, and a totally wrong order will give minus 100. And in this example, its nearing order gives us 70%. As random sentences, forming these 5, basically giving 0% or close to 0%, these random sentences basically show random ordering. And once we have stronger and stronger control, we see the generated sentence more and more adhering to the ground truth of gradually changing weights on a specific control code being followed. Finally, we look at another model that is GPT-2 without any fine-tuning, and we see similar characteristics on all these metrics, meaning that our framework is capable of switching to a different base language model, even if it is not generating stories, and keep its performance. Finally, we invited 45 participants to randomly read 30 pairs of stories and determine whether they are generated with a configuration containing 2 topics and a transition, and a baseline where it is only focused on a specific topic, and ask them to choose the stories that demonstrate the transition. Of all relevant answers, 75.1% buyers our generated stories with blending control, demonstrating strong ability of our system injecting transitions into the stories when as instructed. Finally, how can we benefit from this framework? First, we see a trade-off between fluency and fidelity here, and we can find the best candidate by running this process multiple times with different control strengths so that we hit the best balance with some external other matrix determined. Our planner is currently heuristic and rule-based. We can create a parameterized model that learns how to translate these sketches into configurations, for example, with a reinforcement learning agent, and in this process, adding personalization to this process for human designers. Finally, we envision a process whereby the human co-creator has an idea of what the final product, in this case a story, should be, and can express that vision at the level of how topic manifests through the story. We did not make any assumption on the interactions to acquire these sketches, and the next step will be looking into a co-creativity system that both learn from the user and the machine learning model. Thank you for being at this presentation, and feel free to scan this QR code to try our CodeLab demo. Thank you, and thank you to my advisor.